Hey, boys and girls, it's Nancy A. Shenker, also known as the Geezerproofer, here for another great, interesting, hopefully inspiring episode of the Geezerproofer, How to Be a Badass After 50. And today's episode really relates to anybody at any age because it's about one of my favorite topics, artificial intelligence, as opposed to human intelligence, which hopefully we have a lot of. And part of human intelligence is learning how to flex and change and respond to changes in the world. And that is what being a beezer is all about. Somebody who be relevant, be in the moment, be curious, as opposed to being a geezer. And you could be a geezer at any age, but being a geezer just means you're stuck in the way things have always been done. And it's so relevant to today's conversation because I have the beezer of all beezers with me today, Eric Miller, who works for an engineering company, and I'll let him tell you what it is he actually does as his day job. But he and I met through the Arizona Technology Council, and we are fast friends on social media, and we are now like totally geeking out on using AI to make graphics. And when I saw Eric posting on Facebook, I reached out to him and said, you have to be a guest on my show. Yeah. So just to give you a little bit of context, I wrote my book about AI back in 2017. For those of you who are watching the video, you could see the book cover, go to Amazon, you could buy your copy or download it. It's still, I would say, maybe 70% accurate. But what's so interesting is that 7 years ago, I saw this change a-coming, and this morning I saw a statistic that Gartner published that only a year ago, 20-something% of CEOs really thought that AI could change their business models, and in 2024, that number is up to more than 50%. So this shit is real, as we say, and it doesn't matter if you're 8 years old. I actually just recently taught my granddaughter how to use Canva's AI to create custom graphics, or 68 years old, which is my age. It is not only coming, it is here. It could make your job easier. It could make your life better. And with that as a setup, here is the geeky but lovable and oh so intelligent, human intelligent Eric Miller.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so start with, I just turned 60. So
happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Company's 30 years old. Marriage is 30 years old. So a lot of round numbers this year. Basically what I do is I'm the co-owner of an engineering company. So we help people who make physical products. We sell them software and hardware they use, and then we do consulting. So we work with big companies and little companies and kind of help them make machines. It's basically what we do. I've been doing that, like I said, for 30 years. On top of that, very active in the technology community here in Arizona. I just finished up as chairman of the board of the Tech Council. I'm now emeritus, which I had to look up and see what that means. And what it basically means is I keep the title, but I don't get anything else. So it's
and
kind
people
of fun.
think you're very wise.
Very wise.
And emeritus is always like the wise person.
My
and
beard got a little grayer.
Yeah, they'll go, Eric, how did we do this last year?
Exactly.
And you can just rub your beard and spew out something that may or may not be true.
Exactly.
And people go, oh, he's the emeritus.
That's exactly right. We respect his words and get him some coffee. So that was really good. Some other stuff I do is I have a monthly column in the Business Journal. And just recently did a couple on this topic, and really a lot of what I write in there is how I'm struggling with getting old. And I often start with Andy Rooney, which hopefully your listeners remember Andy, right? And I think he was probably 45 when I thought he was an old man. But,
yeah, if you don't know who Andy Rooney is, just Google it, boys and girls.
Amazing
like
human.
anything and everything is on Google. Google Andy Rooney, Google Walter Cronkite. So the other day I mentioned James Taylor to somebody.
Oh, wow.
And they had no idea who I was talking about. So that was pretty frightening.
That's one little classic. Yeah, so I often start from that perspective of why don't they do this and why don't they do that, and kind of a little curmudgeon. So I'm always, my struggle with between a geezer and a beezer is it's kind of appealing to be a geezer, to kind of sit back in my armchair and complain about kids today, right? And how they don't understand it back in my day, but it's not really me. I love new. And we'll definitely talk more about that. The other thing I do in the community is I work quite a bit with the startup world here in Phoenix and in the Southwest in general, doing mentoring with Clean Tech Open, as well as the Arizona Commerce Authority, and belong to a local angel group called Arizona Tech Investors. So keeps me out of trouble. Once the kids left, I was bored. So yeah, I do a lot of stuff.
And you're
outside
not
of work.
from these parts, right? You grew
I'm
up somewhere
halfway. So my dad was a little bit background on me. My mother is a Jewish doctor's daughter. My father was a West Point graduate fighter pilot. It's two very different people.
Whoa.
So this is why I have a bit of a split personality. Sometimes my dad comes out, sometimes my mom comes out. So yeah, Columbia and West Point, kind of interesting. But yeah, so my dad was stationed here most of my childhood. So I grew up mostly here. Traveled around the world a little bit, went in my teen years, which was a wonderful experience, and then ended up going to high school in Sacramento and then University of California at Berkeley for my degree in mechanical engineering. And then I got a job offer here and in the Bay Area, and I thought, oh, it's the same salary, and I'd have to have a roommate to live in the Bay Area. This is 1986. And I thought, I'll just move to Phoenix and save up a little bit of money and then move back. And I still can't afford to move back to California. Honestly.
I know. This is the kind of place that you go and you think you're just passing through. And here I am 7 years later.
Exactly.
I'm still living here.
Yeah.
Tomorrow I'm going out to look at real estate with one of my podcast guests, Nick L. Tawil,
Great.
because I'm like, oh, well, the weather here, except for the summer, is pretty cool. The lifestyle is nice.
Yeah.
The airport is terrific. So why shouldn't I own something in Phoenix?
Life is easy here.
So you may be stuck with me, Eric.
You know, what's great is that's not a bad thing. And no matter where you go, we're still connected because of all this new technology.
Exactly, exactly. So let's jump into our discussion of AI and robotics. And I was telling Eric that I wrote my my first book about AI back in 2017 because I saw it coming.
Yep.
So I guess, you know, in the old days, they would call me a futurist
Okay,
or
let's
a lunatic.
Label yourself that way. Yes.
Okay, I am a futurist.
Very good.
And in 2017, because you and I have both lived through many phases of automation, from the mainframe to the PC to the smartphone, and seeing the miniaturization and the automation of things.
Yeah.
And I know you're a bit of a Trekkie. When did Star Trek first talk about replacing humans with machines?
You know, as a huge sci-fi fan and a massive Star Trek fan, I grew up with it, right? And so this was core to, I want to say it was Arthur C. Clarke that maybe did the first one where the phone system became sentient because of all the connections, right? It was enough connections to create a sentient being. And so it's been a you know, and of course Star Trek, the original series, which is the best, did it the best. And you know, there's a couple different episodes where there's one where they replace the captain with a computer, right? Which is something that all of us are going to have to deal with.
In
right?
1960 something.
It was probably 65, 66, 68. I think it was the third season, probably 68. Yeah. And yeah, just fantastic writers, and they addressed it, right? What happens when you do that? And there's good and bad to it, right?
Well, in the future, we're going to be talking about this about 65, 66, and a voice coming through our headphones will say it's 68 dummies.
Exactly.
And it'll immediately, there's a great technology that I was just reading about again today called Gong, which is conversational intelligence. And what they do is they record sales conversations real time. So if somebody is starting to say, well, your product is expensive, the salesperson will automatically be prompted to offer a discount. So that's a great example of automation put to good use. And if you looked at the flip side, you could say, oh, that's creepy. Somebody's listening to the conversation.
Their boss was doing it already.
Yeah, and why is it any creepier? At least there it's fact-based and it's statistical, and you're looking at an EKG of your conversation.
Yeah.
So automation is best used when it enhances human performance.
Right.
So the example I always give is if you were faced today with a choice of using a old-fashioned cloth mop to clean your floor versus a vacuum cleaner, which would you choose? Or a dustbuster?
Right.
And you'd say, oh, of course the dustbuster. Why do I want to fill a bucket with water, pour in the soap? So you need to think about artificial intelligence in those terms, that they are an enabler. You're still controlling the vacuum cleaner, unless you have a Roomba. But in that case, you're
I just got a Roomba,
in that case, you're still the robot overlord, as I call it.
Yes.
So let's just stop, being geezerly and arguing about whether AI is a good thing or a bad thing. It is a thing, and it's real, and it's here. And so, as the name of my book implies, if you don't embrace the machine, then you're going to get chewed up by it.
I mean, look at people you may know out there who still don't have a cell phone, right? There aren't too many left, but they really struggle to work in our modern society, right? You don't have to be on it all day, but if you don't have a smartphone, it's really hard to negotiate in today's world, right? And I think the same is true of AI. It's the tendency in me is to look for what the faults are, where it hallucinates, where it doesn't apply, find all these things wrong with it. But the fact of the matter is that I use it so I've replaced how I search. I do a lot of, another thing I do on the side is I write content for other people. So I have to research these things and write articles, right? And I used to go and use search engines, read the articles, et cetera, et cetera. Well, one thing that these modern AI tools are really, really good at is summarizing.
Oh yeah, it's
So
like
you-
having
yeah.
it's like having an unpaid intern.
Exactly.
Sorry to all college graduates. I mean, I do employ college graduates,
Yes.
and the first thing I do is I teach them how to be prompt engineers.
That's the key.
Because they are still my research brain.
Yep.
But I was having this conversation with a fellow writer yesterday about how AI is great for a first draft, but it can't make puns yet.
Right.
It can't copy somebody's tone. It will be able to in the future,
yeah.
but that's fine. I'll just write a prompt and I'll go work on my tan or go out to happy hour, which is how I look at it. Again, using the vacuum analogy or the cake mix analogy, all of these evolutions in history, I think what scares the crap out of most people is that the robots will get smarter than us. And that's on us. We just can't get
that
stupid.
would be our fault. Yeah, that would
Yeah.
be our fault. And everything in moderation, right? So there's a lot of people out that are like, uncontrolled growth of AI. No, we don't care. Everything's fine. It'll work itself out. Well, that history has proven no. We got to have a little bit of
Just
control.
watch that Star Trek episode
Exactly
where
right.
thank God Spock got his shit together
Yes.
and jumped in because the robot was running amok
Yes.
and the guy who had invented it didn't know how to reprogram it. It's a great episode. And I'm not even a Trekkie,
Yeah.
and I love that episode because I'm a techie, not a Trekkie.
And Voyager as well, which is where a probe gets sentient. The Voyager probe goes out into space, gets sentient, comes back.
Define sentient because some of our listeners may not know
Basically
what that means.
the ability to make its own decisions. So
Right.
right now, AI is not sentient, right? You ask it a question, and it basically what these large language models do is they go and they summarize. They predict, like when you type in your phone and it predicts the next word you're going to type, that's what these are on steroids, massive data centers basically predicting what the next word would be. And so that can't, decide that I'm sad today, right? It can decide that most people who answer this question mention that they're sad, but they can't decide that it is sad.
But what Grammarly does, which is one of my favorite
fan of
AIs,
Grammarly.
is I'll write an article and it'll say, you sound you sound confident, which is good. You sound happy, which is good. Or sometimes it'll say, you're being a bitch. It won't say it in those
You're
words.
being a little bitter.
And then I will go back. And there's another app that I love for writing called Hemingway, which will tell you what grade level you're writing
Yes,
to.
yeah.
And I used to have a freelance assignment where they wanted me to write at the 7th grade level.
that's hard, yeah.
So the AI was dumbing me down,
Yeah.
which was great because I couldn't necessarily dumb myself down,
Yeah.
which is why I just asked you to define
Yeah.
sentient because some of our listeners may be listening at my granddaughter could be listening.
That's
and,
right. Good point.
And if you are, hi Caroline.
Hi there. Glad you're listening. So it's really, there's a lot of good science fiction out there. And there's a lot of science fiction that we point to that's very negative, where the robots, Skynet, of course, is the most famous from the whole Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, right? Where they take over and we fight these battles and such and so forth and so on. I mean, that can happen, but that happens, it's our fault, right? We didn't do it right. So we have to have a little bit of control on things.
Yeah,
Not
exactly.
crazy
Human
out
intelligence. I was playing rock, paper, scissors with my daughter a few weeks ago. We were at this weird exercise class, and that's how they decided who got to do which exercise.
Gotcha.
But for some reason, I thought there was also a match in rock, paper, scissors match, and I Googled it, and I might have just hallucinated that at some point in my youth, or my father, who is prone to making up games,
He
might
may have added that.
Might have added the match. There is no match, by the way.
Yeah.
But
There is rock, paper, scissor, Spock, lizard, which is the nerd version.
Have not heard of that. So let's get back to our conversation.
Yes.
I digress. Let's get back to our conversation
As we are wont to do.
about artificial intelligence. So, we talked a little bit about how some of our favorite uses of AI are graphic design.
Yes,
like
love it.
I thought about going to art school out of high school, but realized very early on I had no talent in painting, sculpture. I was a pretty good collage artist, but even that, cutting stuff out, breathing in the glue was not a healthy thing. So Canva launched 15 or so years ago. It's now, or maybe it was sooner than that, but it's now valued at like $15 billion.
huge.
And it now has all kinds of built-in AI. So if I imagine something, I can then render it. So if you follow me on Instagram, my handle is theonswitch, TheonSwitch. You'll see a graphic that I designed yesterday using AI, and it's basically a plane flying from cactuses to New York.
Yeah.
And that's all I needed to do. I am a prompt engineer. In addition to being the geezer proofer, you just type in, make a picture. And did it get it right the first time? No, I didn't like what it did.
Yeah.
So I said, do it again. And the second time it got it right. And had I been, and I love graphic designers. I have a creative director who I still employ for high level work. But when it comes to like the simple stuff where I just need a picture for an article I'm writing, there's nothing like it.
So I've always done my own graphic art because I like it. I'm not really good at it, but I like it. And so I've been using Adobe since I got my first Mac back in the day, right? It's the Adobe Suite back in a long time ago. And I did not want to use the new Firefly, which is the Adobe tool, right? And I won't use Canva. That's for other people, right?
It's for me.
What changed my mind is I have somebody that works with me that was making a flyer, and I'm like, that's gorgeous. How'd you do that? I said, Canva. It took me 30 seconds. I'm like, okay, I need to learn these tools. And so I sat out to do every day. I did a different prompt. So I would wake up in the morning and something would inspire me, whether it was a roadrunner running across the street or my dog being fearless, but whatever. And I would turn that into a prompt, or maybe something work related, like I was writing an article on something. And so that would be my prompt for the day. And I'd create an image. And so I did it for 30 days, learned a ton. And that's one of the things I learned to overcome the geezer in me is I got to set myself a goal. And for me, if it's a public goal, it's better, right? I'm not good at holding myself accountable, but other people will. And I did miss a day, and everybody's like, where's the picture, right? So it's good. And so that's what I did. I did for 30 days. I went ahead and every day did a different prompt, explored the different features in the program and everything. And now I was just doing an article the other day, and I'm like, oh, I need a header image for this. And I started looking through the stock images. I'm like, stop. This is not the way we do it. Tap, 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 tap. Boom, done.
Yeah, even the stock libraries like Shutterstock have
starting
an
to use them.
AI function.
Yes. Yep.
And I'll look through Shutterstock first. And if I can't find what I want, I'll just make it.
Yep.
And it's no different from cooking. Like I keep
so
trying to
great,
use these analogies that people our age are familiar with. If you are making cookies and you discover that you don't have milk in the house, you'll Google now. In the past,
Yes.
you would have just said, oh, I can't make cookies. Or you would have gone next door to your neighbor and said, can I borrow a cup of sugar?
Yeah.
Now you can substitute other things.
Right.
So, look at it from that perspective, that if you can't make something out of whole cloth, then just figure out how the how the machine can make it for you.
Yeah, one way I like to think about it is the internet gave us, so I was one of those kids that actually read encyclopedias. I know it's a shocker as a child. And so,
I confess, I did as well. It was really painful for me to throw away or give away my mother's Britannica series when she passed away.
Still have mine. But what the internet gave us was access to that kind of information to go and read it, right? What AI has given us is the ability to synthesize, to create something, to build something from that information. Even if I don't have the skills to do it inherent, the computer does that for me. And so whether it's writing content, so something we're doing in marketing, right, is we sell a piece of hardware for 3D printing. We want to create some content for it. We don't want the content to be the same as the manufacturer of the equipment. So we take 3 different articles, load it into AI, and say, and then my marketing person takes a bunch of articles that she's written and says, use these articles. This is my style. Use these as source, write me a new article that summarizes these things in my style, and boom, it's done.
And then the human has to go back and fact check and
Fix 3 or 4 things.
make sure that it's not plagiarized,
Yes.
and that the credit is given.
Yep.
But that's no different from what editors used to do in the old days. And when you think about all the jobs that have been replaced by new jobs
Oh yeah.
since the beginning of the industrial era, it's a lot. And so just think of this as the next evolution.
Yeah.
And if you don't embrace it, you'll, as I said, you'll get run over by it, because that is what's going to happen. And some of the jobs of the future will include having prompt engineering skills.
Yeah.
Graphic designers will need to have digital creation skills. People who work in restaurants will need to know how to make sure that the server robots and the pizza making robots are functioning properly. There'll always be plumbers, because toilets will always get backed up. but the snake may be a robotic device. I just
smart snake,
I just saw Twisters.
Yeah, we did too.
Yeah,
It's a
which
great
I
movie.
loved
Yeah.
because it's more than just an action movie and a rom-com. If you see Twister, the original, and then Twisters, and then compare how the evolution of tornado chasing has been influenced by both social media and technology, it's actually pretty funny.
Yeah, we like that movie. It was really, really good. Yeah, one of the things I also like to point out with this whole AI thing is, remember these large language models compile information that others have created, and somebody's got to create. If we don't keep creating new information, we don't keep creating new innovative ideas, it's just going to be rehashing old ideas. So one of the things I really focus on is I'm gonna write this article, I'm gonna publish it, because that's gonna go into the model. So we've got to feed it. We got to keep new content going in, and that's a way to feel part of it as well. To where, because I think it'd be kind of easy to go down it doesn't really matter. The robots are gonna do it all. But no, this is summarizing things, right? So be the person. And sometimes, every once in a while, I work in a very niche industry. So every once in a while, I'll summarize something with AI and search, and I'm like, that's me. It actually is just repeating back my words. That's an article I wrote 10 years ago, right? And so when you're in a very narrow industry, there's not a lot of source material, you can do that. So it's really kind of cool. And that's one of the things that helps me as well, is when it's 1 o'clock in the morning, I got a deadline that I technically missed because it was supposed to turn in at midnight. I'm like, no, I need to keep doing this, because this will be a piece of content that will go into the large language model that will help improve the knowledge of everybody.
And, I think that AI, artificial intelligence, will ultimately, if managed properly, and that's, the big
That's
if,
the big if.
bold,
Yep.
capital letters, which is why our listeners all need to embrace the machine.
Yep.
As you could tell, I like that phrase. I have a traadmark on it.
Very
so I'm going
good.
to say it
Definitely
many
do it,
times.
yeah.
So my trademark attorney will go, oh, yes, you're still using it.
that.
But it can ultimately make our lives better and easier. And again, I hate to keep coming back to like the 1950s housewife
100%.
analogy, but it is. I look at my mother and all the things she needed to do by hand
Yes.
that have been expedited, automated, and my daughter, who's a busy mom of two, because she has all of these technology tools at her fingertips, it enables me to see what my grandkids are up to. It enables us to communicate more often. So you have to look at the human benefits and the mental health benefits and get over the stress of learning something new. We learned how to ride two-wheelers.
Yes.
Some of us learned how to diaper babies. We learned a lot of shit in our lives.
learned a ton.
And this is just one more thing we need to learn. And I think what makes it scary to many people over 50 is that technology is not their first language. But remember, guys and girls, you learned how to speak a foreign language in junior high.
Well, I never did. But
Well, you learned something in junior high, I assume.
I was told by my teacher to don't try and speak German.
All right. But you did learn how to speak tech. So
I did learn many programming languages.
No self-deprecation allowed on my podcast.
Okay.
That is like something
Did I
that's...
mention my mother's Jewish? I didn't. It's in my genes.
Yes, I am also a Jewish doctor's daughter.
Yes.
My mother was a teacher of the deaf, which meant
that's
she
awesome.
she always spoke really loudly. but I never
love it.
learned ASL, which would have been a great skill to have. But anyway, any other words of wisdom? You mentioned you have a podcast, but it's kind of like
Very
that's something
niche.
that our listeners
Yeah,
may want to
I mean,
tune into.
I'll just throw it out there. If any of you listeners out there are ANSYS users or do any kind of finite element analysis or CFD, if these words mean nothing to you, don't worry. There's only about 10,000 of us in the world. But yeah, it's called All Things ANSYS, dude. Give it a listen. It's a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun. We talk about the world of simulation.
Cool. Yeah. And Eric is one of those few people that I've met in my lifetime who has that ultimate right brain, left brain balance, which I think is really key. So for those of you who are creatives, who don't think you'll ever be able to climb that technology hurdle, do not fear. I mean, I was an English and psychology major. I never took a technology related class in my life. I really struggled with science,
Right.
but I know how to type and I know how to push buttons and I know how to bake. And I was able to cross that digital divide, as I like to say, and become something of a techspert.
Yep.
Technology expert. And when I look back and realize that I wrote my AI book in 2017,
Yeah, you saw
I'm
it.
like, whoa, like people are talking about this now like they invented it. But, 7 years ago, I was out there waving the AI flag.
It's coming. It's coming. Yeah, I think the other thing to note is, for me, I got to look at why I don't want to do it, and it's often fear. I'm like, well, why? I mean, I'm 60. Get over it, right? It's time to just do it. And if it doesn't work, what's the worst thing that's going to happen?
Well, I have an upcoming guest who just wrote a movie about a woman who scaled El Capitan
Wow.
in her late 60s, had never climbed in her life. Her son was the subject of free solo.
Okay.
She did use pulleys and all the rest of the stuff. But talk about
still.
overcoming fears.
Oh.
The movie's called Climbing into Life. Again, Melissa Davey will be on the
Excellent.
show. But whenever I'm in Canva or online and I'm struggling with something, I go, at least I'm not fucking climbing El
Hanging up the sign of
Capitan.
El Capitan.
Yes,
That's
I
terrifying.
do not. I'm not like climbing straight up a wall.
Yeah.
So yes, you're never too late to learn something new. Just read about a woman who started running at 70. I'm not doing that. I don't like.
Your knees might not be happy.
Yeah,
with
I
that.
had frayed meniscus. So I'm not going to do that. But I am really challenging myself every week to do something that feels really uncomfortable.
I went back to school. I'm at the end of the month. I'll be getting my certificate from UC Berkeley Extension for creative writing. So, which is really cool.
You go, Eric.
Yeah. So I just woke up one morning and said I've always wanted to write fiction. I'm still not good at it. It's really hard for me. I write nonfiction. I've always have, but writing fiction is really tough. And I just always thought it popped into people's brains. Doesn't. But yeah, so that's been a great experience for me, and that I think it's a great thing that I like to share with people is, I just there was a lot of fear and am I the older person in the class? I'm not. I'm not going to be good at it. I'm not great, but you know what? It's been a lot of fun, and I really enjoy it. So, and it's something I've always wanted to do.
Yeah, and I went the other way. I started out by writing fiction, and now I write nonfiction, and that's actually what I do for a living.
Yeah.
So now is a really good time to kind of wrap it up with that as a segue. Eric, how can people find you other than, obviously, I don't know if you're looking to get more Facebook friends, but why don't you tell our audience where the best places are to find you?
Well, the best place to find me is probably LinkedIn. So there's a lot of Eric Millers out there. So if you put in Eric Miller, PADT, that's the name of my company, you'll find me there.
And it's Eric with a C.
Eric with a C, that's right. I'm 60, no K. I don't know when that happened.
And Miller, like Miller, like the people who used to mill corn.
Yes, exactly right.
Back in the day.
Yeah. So
now that's being done by robots.
now it's being done by robots, completely automated. So yeah, look me up there on LinkedIn. I'm not super active on the other social media platforms unless you want to see pictures of my cooking or my dogs. But I'm also on Facebook. You just look in Phoenix for me. And then if you subscribe to the business journals, like I said, I have a monthly column in the Phoenix Business Journal. And if you get the big subscription, you can read it no matter where you are. And check me out. You can also check out my writing at Eric's Word Doodles. No, what is it? ericworddoodles.wordpress.com.
Very cool. Yes, you're definitely a Renaissance dude, as many of us are.
Yes.
The right brain, left brain thing. It's been truly delightful having you on the podcast. You're welcome back anytime.
Love it.
The best way to find Embrace the Machine is probably via Amazon. You can also go to my Instagram, which is, I think I mentioned earlier, is the On Switch, TheonSwitch for now. But come October, there's some exciting things happening with the Geezer Proofer and my brand. So stay tuned for that. And feel free to follow me on any social platform. I am trying to build, as they say, my digital footprint.
Very good.
And remember, boys and girls, to always be a beezer. Be open to learning things, be open to technology, be open to new experiences. And if you choose to be a geezer, that's fine too. The world needs its couch potatoes and curmudgeon-y types. It's just not me and Eric.
Not me, no.
So have a wonderful day and keep listening. You can find this podcast wherever you listen, Apple, Spotify, blah, blah, blah. Just Google it. It pops up. I also am on YouTube if you'd like to see our lovely faces and Eric's very wise beard that he rubs when he's thinking deeply. And keep on listening. We have some great episodes coming up, and the past episodes are still up on all the sites. So leave a review, give us a thumbs up if you're enjoying it, or if you're not, give me feedback. I have thick skin. And have a wonderful day. Peace out.
Bye-bye.